Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Greenkill Sessions presents Calling All Poets for October 13th, 2022. My name is Mike Jakovic, president and host of Calling All Poets. Jim Eve, my co-founder, and Greg Carell, our webmaster, are not here for the evening, and so it's up to me. So I'm glad that we could be here together tonight for a rather special occasion. What we do here every second Thursday is 3 featured readers, and we have been bringing in an open mic over the summertime, and we YouTube it out to you folks out there. So it's just another way for CAPS to be out there reaching our audience, which we appreciate doing, and we also appreciate your support. As I said, my name is Mike Jakovic, and for the evening, we have the Hudson Valley Women's Writing Group, and they're going to be reading from their new book, their second book together. It's called Rethinking the Ground Rules. And our first reader for the evening is Kappa Aderwa, who was born into a family where everybody wrote. She sent off a manuscript to Harcourt Brace when she was 11, and it got rejected. But more recently, Kappa's work has appeared in 3 issues of Legacies and the poetry anthology An Apple in Her Hand and In a Slant of Light. Her work has also appeared on the poetry blog Writing in a Woman's Voice, the Episcopal New Yorker, Lakeview Press, and LightwoodPress.com. Kappa retired after 20 years as reference librarian for Vassar College. The first reader in tonight's 4 readers from Rethinking the Ground Rules, Kappa Wa.
Hi, as Mike has said, I'm Kappa Wa, one of the members of the Hudson Valley Women's Writers Group, and I want to thank Mike Jurkovic for having us here tonight. And thank you all for joining us online and in the flesh. I was brought up in the South, and I tend to read stories from my childhood with my accent comes back, so if I sound a little different in the 2 readings, I am not a shapeshifter, I just have an accent. First piece is a prose piece called Wednesday's Child. Let me tell you how alluring Mr. Slosson's paint shack was to a 7-year-old. It was kid-sized, 6 feet wide by 8 feet, with a door and a shed roof. Its appeal increased by its being usually padlocked. The inside smelled of oil paint, turpentine, linseed oil, prickly in the nose. The shack was painted white inside and out and sat 10 feet from our back door. Since we lived in college housing, our yard was not really ours. We could plant some green vegetables in it. The college had built a small playground for faculty children, and there was Mr. Slosson's paint shack. He seemed old to me then, but Mr. Slosson was probably in his 40s, dressed in a white t-shirt and white overalls in the summer. Fall and spring, the shirt was long-sleeved in that mild Virginia weather. Winters, he didn't paint much, but made repairs elsewhere around the college. He had let me in the shack a few times, and I could see it would be just perfect. For what kid did not need in the 1950s a fort, a clubhouse, a hideout, a place where parents couldn't find you, a place to escape from siblings. It contained paint cans with wire handles, canvas drop cloths, painting rags, brushes, 1 small window with 3 dusty panes and 1 broken empty one, plus all the white items inside kept it from being too dark. Just dark enough to add to the allure. On the times I found it unlocked, I went in and took possession. A few paint cans, rearranged, made tables and chairs on a rug of drop cloth. When Mr. Slosson caught me at it, he didn't seem to mind. Put them paint cans back against the wall, fold up that drop cloth, and skedaddle. Another time, closer to dusk, when he found me inside, it was, "You can bring a flashlight in, but don't you bring no candle or matches. Them fumes could light up and blow you clear to kingdom come." The day I want to tell you about was hot and sticky. I checked the padlock and saw the little bit of space on the bolt that meant the owner wanted to make it look locked without actually locking it. So in I went. When I heaved some paint cans around to make my usual furniture, I discovered a new element in my hideout. There against the wall lay a thin bundle wrapped in mottled red newspaper, about 3 feet long. As I squatted down to unwrap it, a metallic odor, copper or iron, began to mix with the sharp paint smell. I pulled apart the layers of paper, meeting some resistance at the end. Blood, hair, bone, gristle, and a sweet, rotten stench filled the air. My gorge rose, but I swallowed it back down. I had uncovered 4 long, thin legs ending in little black hoofs. Deer, I thought. What did this mean? Who would cut the legs off a deer, much less wrap and stow them in my hideout? And why? The room darkened. Well, I see you found my package, Miss Curiosity Killed the Cat. What do you think of my little dear pretties? I whirled around from my hunker, falling on my backside. No, don't get up. I like seeing you that way. I crab-scrabbled backward and fetched up against paint cans as Mr. Slauson advanced. You got pink panties on, like another little gal I knowed. Do yours have a day on them, like Wednesday? He knelt down next to me, and I just got overwhelmed. The heat, the smells, my discovery, Mr. Slauson's new and much too personal tone all worked together to make me sick. Spit suddenly flooded my mouth, and I vomited all over his white overalls. He reeled backwards as I jumped up and ran out. Standing by the door, I called in, I'm so sorry, Mr. Slauson. I didn't mean to upchuck on you. Please don't tell my parents. I won't tell them if you won't, was his reply. I went inside my house to drink Kool-Aid and wash away the sour taste in my mouth. But each time I thought of those deer legs, I shivered and smelled them again. I kept sniffing my fingers, convinced they reeked of blood and vomit, even though I'd washed my hands with black lava soap twice. My perfect hideout was no longer my special place. I got a book, but I couldn't settle to reading. I just sat on the screen porch, going over the time in the shack, watching for Mr. Slauson to leave. He finally did, but this time he carried the long bundle that must have been those deer legs, now wrapped in a canvas drop cloth. After waiting a long time to make sure he wouldn't return, I got a box of matches from the kitchen everything drawer and went out back. Sure enough, the shack door was locked. I lit a match and pushed it between the door and the jamb. It burned out. I went around to the window, lit another match, and dropped it through the empty pane. Nothing happened. I couldn't stop thinking about those deer legs. After lighting a few more matches with no result, I lit the rest of the box and pushed it through the window. This time there was a whoomp, and the fire caught hold. I ran next door to the Western Union office, burst in the door, and yelled, "Fire! Mr. Slauson's paint shack is on fire!" The fire engine came quickly, but the shack burnt down to the ground. All the grown-ups kept explaining to each other and to the kids gathered to watch how oily rags can spontaneously combust from the fumes and how the paint in the cans would speed up the blaze. The college may have built Mr. Slauson a new paint shack, but it wasn't in our backyard. Thank you. And the next is a shortish poem. It's probably the only poem that I've had that just came whole, and one morning I woke up and there it was. God has a zillion refrigerators. God has a zillion refrigerators, and I am one. Inside, find hot sauce of anger, frozen chicken hearts. Open my door to see baked goods, baked bads, half-baked ideas. Stand before me, God, like a teenage boy, staring till you find my 2% and drink me straight from the carton. Towards the back, find containers of curdled hopes, long past their expiration date. Bend before me, God, a small girl searching for the pearl of last night's tapioca. In my crisper, most has gone soft and limp, though some cilantro still puts forth new leaf. Kneel before me, God, housewife of my soul. Wipe away the sticky bits, the spills, the spots. Clean up the fruits, unused, dry, decaying. Open my door, God, and let my light come on. And the last one I'll read, thank you. The last one I'll read is, If Stones Had Legs. If stones had legs, Gibraltar might go bathing, and Barbary apes take the plunge, empires fall. If stones had legs, Sisyphus could buy a leash for his obedient rock. Another myth falls to dust. If stones had legs, Roman soldiers might chase the stone plugging Christ's tomb. Resurrection or rumor? If stones had legs, pilgrims progress around the sea seeking Plymouth Rock. Oh, happy undiscovered Indians. If stones had legs, Ayers Rock could track Aborigines around Australia. No time for dream time. If stones had legs, Stonehenge might stalk London, a Neolithic Godzilla, cars crushed, druids baffled. If stones had legs, Zen gardens would susurrate an endless rattle of pebbles. So much for contemplation. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much. Hey, can I say something? It's nice to have an audience. What about that? Give yourselves a hand for coming out in the rain and stuff. Hold on, I have to change my glasses before I introduce our next reader. Forgot all about that part. Our next reader from Rethinking the Ground Rules is Jan Slotnick-Smith, who was a SUNY Distinguished Teaching Professor Emerita in the Department of English at SUNY New Paltz. Her work has been published in many journals, including Kansas Quarterly, the Alaska Quarterly Review, Memoir, and the Vassar Review and the Broadkill Review. Her work has been nominated for the Pushcart Press Prize series, and she has 2 volumes of poetry published by the Edwin Mellon Press, We Speak in Tongues, 1991, and She Had This Memory, 2000. She co-edited with Lawrence Carr a collection of works by Hudson Valley women writers entitled A Slant of Light, Contemporary Women Writers of the Hudson Valley, which won first prize in the 2014 USA Book Awards for Anthology and was a finalist in the Women's Literature Chick Lit category. Her poetry volume, Foraging for Light, recently published by Finishing Line Press in 2019. And her chapbook about Bess Houdini, Over the Moon, Gone, The Vanishing Act of Bess Houdini, recently was published by Palooka Press last year in 2021. I love the Bess Houdini poems. A longtime supporter of Calling All Poets, Jan Slotnick-Smith.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike, for supporting us, and want to send a shout out to Jim Bergman at MediaX Press for the anthology. The first thing I'm going to read is We Gather It All In. A bronzed, curled copper beech leaf, a fly, a moth caught in a spider web, a shriveled quince, a rotted pine green shingle, a dried bird's nest, one cracked robin's egg still there, a frayed white doily, a crystal cake plate, a silver candy dish, a tarnished thimble, an embroidered linen tablecloth yellowed with age, rubber stockings, a rumpled house dress, a wooden chopping bowl with a residue of grease, recipes for lime jello molds, stuffed cabbage written in a mother's hand, a father's spectacles, his fossil watch with an alligator band, drafts of his poems in a crimped script, journals with half-done haikus, an empty one with white birch on the cover, a child's molar left in an egg cup, a pair of size 3 Nike sneakers on a bookshelf, a broken slinky with Etch-a-Sketch, Masters of the Universe, and a Fisher-Price garage. Letters from a war long ago in an illegible hand, stuffed in a plastic bag. Daybooks, white blank pages stacked on a shelf, all in the wake of longing. Thanks. That was actually written after I cleaned out my parents' house after their deaths. And there are objects that we have that are just so resonant with meaning. And this is written during the pandemic. There is nothing new about grief. There is nothing new about grief, the way it burns fingers until they blister or sear through the body like an electric shock, the way it leaves traces, marks, like white fingerprints on sunburned skin, or the crust at the corner of the eye after weeping. There is nothing new about grief, the way silence roots in the gullet, the way you want to yowl, but there are no screams from a wounded tongue. At night, as cool wind seeps in from an open window, you are sure you hear a woman's screech. Then you realize it's coyotes' cacophonous cries and yelps echoing against dark mountains. You want sleep. You want oblivion. No more visions of black rubber body bags stacked in cooler trucks, or faces masked in blue cloth, eyes staring out from dim television screens. And then the scratching, almost soundless, creatures under the sink, in crevices in the walls, scurrying across wood-planked floors. You find a carcass of a small gray mouse in the bathtub, toothpick legs stretched up, eyes bloodied. Into the trash it goes. You ditch it. You ditch it without a thought, without mourning, without grief, or so you think. At night, a graven image of disaster and your own bloodied hands. And this third one is about my father when he was in the nursing home, and he was 100 at the time. Dream, an angler at 100. If my father were a fisherman, he would dig his crooked toes into the sand on the shore to make them disappear, a thick tangle of green and brown seaweed twisting around his ankles, and shards of purple mussels and waves of indigo and brown clamshells would scrape against his skin as the tide rolled in. Then, after gazing at the thin white line of the horizon, he would chisel the fishing pole into a mound of sand, flick the line with a twitch of his wrist, angle it beyond the waves, a thin curve of black wire, gone into the sea. He'd hold it steady in a high arc and occasionally wriggle it a bit to test the waters, to see if fish would snap to the bait. But this is all a dream. My Brooklyn father never ventured to the sea in this way, never watched the glint of sunlight on the waves, never was satisfied with the infinitesimal arc of the line stretching into the air, into the sea. Instead, in the nursing home, I held a conch shell against his ear and then mine. We listened to the barely audible ebb and flow of tides, the whirl of the shell against the whirl of his ear. Never uttering a word, he nodded in time with the tides. And if I imagined him looking at the sea, gazing into its brightness, he would be thinking about his own being, as fragile as the skeletal bones of a fish, gnawed at by voracious time. Or maybe he'd be thinking about his soul, an invisible line into the ocean, absorbed into some infinite blue or a path of silver light. And thanks. I'm just going to read 2 new poems. I'm writing a series about great white cockatoos, believe it or not. And I don't know if any of you know the artist Joseph Cornell, but he did all these shadow boxes and he put all these objects in them. And birds were always his kind of totem, his soul person. And you know, you become a little obsessed. He did a series of shadow boxes dedicated to Juan Gris, and there were like 12 of them, all with cutouts in some form of this great white cockatoo. And I listened to cockatoo screeches. I looked at YouTube videos. I became a little obsessed with great white cockatoos. This one is called The Great White Cockatoo Time and Memory. And in the shadow box, we have the cutout plus strips of watches. The great white cockatoo was ready to flit away. His light yellow-white tufts alert to currents of wind in his shadowed world. Is it 7:25 a.m. or 7:25 p.m.? What does it matter? The light filtering through is dulled, his shadow self a flattened body in the bottom of the box. He sees the faces of the timepieces. He sees the watches, preserved, stopped, at the moment he lost his way. His nomadic flight among sun-dressed eucalyptus groves, sun-dressed palms, hills, and furrows gone. No thick green leaves shaded with damp light at twilight. No feathered crest unfurling to call another. No screeches, no squawks echoing through the rainforest in a single pulse of time. Now mute, his white wings drawn in close to his skin, his black eyes rimmed with blue stare into space. He remembers the sheer joy of making noise. Frozen in the eternal moment of loss, he dreams of light, of wind, of undulations in air, his soul stripped bare and grieving. And this is the last one, and it's called Keening. There are signs, women in the shape of deer, of sparrows, of wind, spirits chanting, let the world come and go in you. Let the keening come and go. Let the world breathe and dream in you. Watch for the shadows that darken the hearth. The heart can only travel in sunlight. Thank you very much.
If I might take a moment after Jan told that story about cleaning out her parents' house, I was cleaning out my parents' house about 12 years ago, and I found a prescription jar with all these brass tacks in it. And, you know, it was obviously my father had picked up a rug or pulled up a rug at some point, and he kept the brass tacks because they kept everything. He just had things, jars of nails and screws. And I went to work the next day, and the guys saw that I was kind of tired, and they're like, what were you doing? I said, I was cleaning out the house last night. And one of the guys asked me, did you find the prescription jar of brass tacks? I kid you not. And I looked at him, and I said, are you kidding me? And he was like, no, they all did it. They all saved everything. And it was just an amazing little coincidence, actually.
Thank you.
Oh, back to the glasses.
Yeah.
All right, our next reader, I promise I'll put my glasses on in time, is Mary O'Melveny, a retired labor rights lawyer living in Washington, D.C. and Woodstock, New York. Mary's poetry has appeared in print and online journals such as Flair, the Flagler Review, the Offbeat, Slippery Elm Literary Journal, Into the Void, West Texas Review, Hamilton Stone Review, Minerva Rising, Split Rock Review, The Poets Below, and The Right Place at the Right Time, as well as in many anthologies on various blog sites such as The New Verse News and Writing in a Women's Voice. Her poems have won or been finalists in several national and international poetry competitions, and she has been nominated for a Pushcart Press Prize series. She is the author of A Woman of a Certain Age and Merging Star Hypothesis, Finishing Line Press 2018 and 2020, and Dispatches from the Memory Care Museum. Hey, I like that title. Kelsey Books 2021, Mary O'Melveny.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for hosting us, and thanks to my fellow women, Hudson Valley women writers. We love what we do, and we've been doing it for a long time. It's very fun. And thank you for hopefully buying our book, Rethinking the Ground Rules. The first poem I want to read is a villanelle. I'm a big fan of villanelles. They allow us to do a lot of things in a modern way, even though the form originated back in the 15th and 16th centuries. This poem is called Villanelle for a Grieving Mother. She sought refuge with a desperate thirst. Sorry, I have to hold this closer. Unquenched, it sent her to our border. How would she know her heart could burst? Perhaps some readers are unversed. Imagine leaving all behind in order to seek refuge. With a desperate thirst, those in greatest need leap headfirst. Their desolation defeats any warder. How could she know her heart would burst? She carried her children with her. At worst, she believed in salvation's ardor. She sought refuge with a desperate thirst. Belief in miracles was what she nursed as they crawled through deserts. Hope's hoarder, how would she know her heart would burst? Now, she's jailed, her children all dispersed. Any moment, alone, they will deport her. She sought refuge with a desperate thirst, and now she knows her heart will burst. Thank you. The next poem is from the section of our book that focuses on relationships and love. And this is a poem that I wrote about my mother, who was always looking for love. It's called Magical Thinking. My mother was looking for love long before it ever materialized. My father was a failure at it for her, though she never left him. Years later, I asked why she stayed on, surrounded by seething anger, as her meager hopes dwindled to dust. Options, she claimed, for better or worse. But I suspected she simply hoped love might triumph after all. When my father was dead, she refocused her search, took up challenges of computerized pairings. She banged out data on questionnaires as if she were playing Shostakovich, met strangers for coffee, hiked local trails, sipped bourbon and ginger in hotel bars. Her so-called match lived in Florida. Off she went, our possessions divided up, sold in the yard. Later, I learned he was no better for her than my angry father. He wore his ugliness like a crown, spit out venomous commands, and watched her gather them like jewels. They divorced, reconciled, parted again. Lawyers' letters flew like wind-blown leaves. Eventually, she felt free to reach out once more for romance. This time, ink was her medium. One spring day, a finely penned reply, cursive training evident, arrived on white linen paper. Alfred lived in Oregon, loved opera, laughed out loud at life's many oddities, read The New Yorker, liked her style. A curious visit led to much more. He moved east, moved in, neighbors be damned. I still have their picture on my bookshelf. They are holding hands, leaning to each other, both laughing. The dog is leaping in the yard. Even now, their spark sizzles through the frame. I slowly came to believe in magical thinking thanks to them. Not simply that happiness might turn up before all the lights go out if we wish hard enough, but that it creates its own power. Alfred died too soon in their story. Afterwards, each day for a year, my mother wrote him a letter, speaking as if he were sitting next to her. Her heart was broken, Love letters kept her alive. The next poem was written after my wife and I traveled to South Africa some years ago to visit a number of wonderful sites. And we went to Johannesburg, where among the great museums and other things there is a museum that was established on a farm where Nelson Mandela was in hiding for many years. And the title of this poem was the motto of that museum, which was called Memory Against Forgetting. South Africa understood our need for active memory. At Lily's Leaf, Mandela hid until betrayal, trial, jail. Now, liberation history is spelled out along paths he walked, so people will always know how to preserve their truest stories. Here, in these ununited states, the power of remembrance is in doubt. Each day, falsehoods spill out like echoes. Future chroniclers will no doubt be amazed at the shadows cast by ghosted truths. How we were asked to remember events that did not take place, to unhear, to unsee. Power's pronouncements shape-shifted daily. We once believed in veracity, not false versions of it. Our eyes were trusted guides. Before too long, someone will design a museum to enshrine not what was, but what was wished for. Authenticity will be locked away, replaced by panoramic pipe dreams, shiny trinkets that resemble facts, alternatively remembered. Not unrelated to that poem, we watched the last session of the January 6th hearings today, and this is a poem that was written right around the time of the January 6th events. It's called Morning Dove Portfolios. Outside my window, 4 doves converse on spider webs of oak and maple branches. Fattened by birdseed, they peer out over the long wintered meadow like savvy scouts searching the scenery for signs of trouble ahead. I want to call out that trouble indeed has arrived. The work of doves has never been as necessary. As they shake out their gray feathers against these sharp winds, I am betting on savvy instinct. Times of rest have ended. Our capital is under siege. Crowds of crazies have climbed granite walls, swept past barricades, spit on floors, pushed through hallways as they dove for crumbs tossed out by a madman. No one gave much thought to doves. Some days I can hear the doves whistle, a high-pitched whine from their wings designed to scare off predators. Their pigeon relatives flew messages for kings and armadas, Caesar and Genghis Khan. Imagine the noise they must have made. Most doves have 10,000 feathers. In a dream, I watched as flocks circled the mall, wings whinnying beneath a pale sun. In the beating, bleeding air, fluffs, tufts, plumage sifted down, cushioned the ground. Soon, silence was everywhere, soft as snow. This next poem is a relatively new poem, and it was written recently to respond to an event that will be apparent. Expanding our universe. Today, our Ring camera chimed an alert about a front door visitor. Instead of morning's paper, a large black bear lumbered by, chestnut eyes aimed toward the creek. We are sharing this space. That is the only news you need to know today, I imagined him saying. Moments later, a second bear, his snout pale, like a mask, strode toward our meadow, not looking back at woods or water. Drought-shriveled apples were long gone from trees. Our neighbors' garbage cans lay strewn in their driveway, contents crumpled like dirtied laundry. All was quiet, though I was eager to eavesdrop, to broaden community. Take a quick stroll in our paw prints. This will be another hot, humid day. Sweating attracts mosquitoes, makes fur coats heavier than lead. Too many trucks, cars speed down these country roads. Trout have stopped dancing in the stream. Still, they would likely observe, we too can magnify our universe, beseech distant stars for guidance as sky passes us by like a prayer. Everybody seeks new directions. And the last poem I will read, I will go back to the villanelle. And this is a villanelle about a recent Supreme Court decision. Villanelle for a post-Roe world. Women have no rights required to be respected, say 6 jurists whose words hurl us back to ancient time. What actions are required to see this travesty corrected? This outcome, undesired by most, was not unexpected. Women have been told for centuries that men's role is prime, that women have no rights required to be respected. Some say our decisions must be made by men, elected but clueless, whose laws transform our choices into crime. What actions shall we take to see such travesty corrected? Once a woman's bodily autonomy has been rejected by folks who've no idea the mountains we must climb, how can we assure that anyone's liberty will be respected? Diminishments of human rights are always quite connected. Misogyny, like slavery, depends on whose lives we define as worth the actions needed to see travesties corrected. Look in the mirror. Do you see the person you expected? No matter age or circumstance, the time has come for rage sublime. If women have no rights required to be respected, revolution is what we need to see this travesty corrected. Thank you.
Before I bring up our last featured reader from Rethinking the Ground Rules, I'll give you a little information about Calling All Poets. We do 3 events a month, actually 4 this month. Our next event is October 20th. No, that's a lie. The next event is October 17th at Quinn's down at in Beacon. We're going to be with our Jazz Poetry Quartet and poetry and jazz, some of the best stuff going on. 8 p.m. at Quinn's in Beacon. And on October 20th, Zoom only, we'll have Carol Grazier, who runs the great reading from Cafe Lena up there in Schenectady. So you can get all that information on www.callingallpoets.net. Our last reader for the evening, before we bring up the open mic, folks, is Tana Miller. And during a 30-year teaching career, Tana authored language curriculum guides for her school district, co-founded and facilitated a grade 5 through 8 annual literary magazine, presented whole language workshops in the Hudson Valley Public Schools and at New York State Reading Conference, for which she received a commendation from the local Literacy Foundation. Tana's work has been published in several feminist and literary journals, in Slant of Light from Cod Hill Press, and An Apple in Her Hand, co-author of Cod Hill Press. Tana was selected a reader at the Newark Public Library and has been a featured reader at local gatherings, libraries, and bookstores. From Rethinking the Ground Rules, Tana Miller.
I want to thank Mike for having us here. It's always a pleasure. I wish everyone who's outside that nasty night could be in this cozy place. It just feels like a little, I feel like a chipmunk in a little hole in a cozy tree in here. It's just wonderful. It's great. It's very good. I also want to thank the other members of the Hudson Valley Women's Writers Group, because it's not just a writers group for me, it's a support system. It's a friendship level that it's the strongest friendship level of a group that I've ever had, and it's become a very integral part of my entire life. So I'm so grateful to have that. The first poem I'm going to read is for my sister. And my sister is watching us tonight. And I promised I'd wink at her. I don't wink too well, but I'm winking at her. Her name is Mary Lee Ferry, and she lives in Rochester. Among the heliotrope and roses, my baby sister and I, she's 73, sit in my garden reminiscing. Childhood's memories spill from our tongues, some so sweet we hug ourselves, others shards with sharp edges. Mama was a slapper. My sister recounts the last time Mama slapped her face. Sister slapped her back. Mama slapped her other cheek harder. Sister slapped Mama again. They stared at one another, cheeks scarlet. Tears rise in Sister's eyes. How could I have done that? She whispers. I pat her arm, remembering when Mama last slapped my own face. I was 22, jiggling my baby in my arms, had done a load of his clothes in her washer. I had used too much laundry detergent, she said. Did I think she was made of money? And why did I assume I could waltz in and do my laundry at her house? I never loved Mama after that, not really. My sister and I clasp our hands together, squeeze hard, safe now, cozy as two old bugs in a rug, ancient sinners weeping a little among the heliotrope and early roses. Let's see. This is a little change of pace. I also enjoy forms, so you'll hear this form. I think it's pretty easy to discern. Medea's Mother's Day. I sing nursery rhymes through the wild night while my lion's teeth hack fat, fur, flesh, bone. Blood like hard rain blesses Hecate's right. The dead, the half-dead, glisten in the slight light. Gruff goats, blind mice, gurgle and groan. I sing nursery rhymes through the wild night. The farmer's brave horse puts up a fight. I snap my fingers and turn him to stone. Blood like hard rain blesses Hecate's right. Mary's meek little lamb, so pure, so white, dies with 3 gored pigs by the old millstone. I sing nursery rhymes through the wild night. My blameless babes tremble with fear and fright to see the horror their own mother has sown. Blood like hard rain blesses Hecate's right. I love you, I screech. Raise my knife and smite my children, their fathers' sin to atone. I sing nursery rhymes through the wild night. Blood like hard rain blesses Hecate's right. Watch out for me. Watch out. All right. right, let me see if I can get this little tab situation I set up here on order. You know, I never have anything to say about this poem before I read it, so I'm just going to read it. I don't know about it. It's a mystery to me, too. Sky sailing. I might have been the trout stream Daddy took me to one early spring, water sprinkling over speckled rocks, thick with life. But I wasn't the quicksilver stream. I wasn't the life within the stream. I was the red-nosed child, perched on the stream's cold banks, bone lonely, while her daddy fished. I might have been Leah, the woman Laban tricked Jacob into marrying, the wife he never loved. I wasn't Leah. I was another wife, unloved, unloved. I might have been formed of velvet or silver, treasured, handed down generation to generation. Instead, I am an ordinary flesh, bone, blood, gristle, dust. I might have been a savant, multiplying faster than light, causing orange, red, yellow, blue digits to flash, slash, crash in the air. I might have been an aria, bringing an audience to tears, causing them to cheer, stamp their feet, beg for more. I might have been the thoughtful skin between your beloved eyes, sacred space where the lion and the lamb cleave to one another. I might have been the air above a stormy sea, a feral howl. I might have been the emptiness between the planets, nothing, nothing. I am none of those. I am more. I am the flickering Milky Way. At night, I spread my gauzy white body over the night sky and sail and sail. Okie dokie. I love cows. I love cows. I've always loved cows. I mean, I have just love affairs with certain cows, and I like them in general. So this poem is kind of in that line of thinking. A tryst near Hobart, New York. Shortly after leaving Hobart, a hamlet reminiscent of villages conjured by a child from miniature sugar pop cereal boxes, I spotted a muddy hoof-print-riddled field teeming with Holstein cows, some entirely red, others white or delicately piebald, many displaying an imaginary continent imprinted on a blank flank. I pulled to the roadside, excited, eagerly crossed the road for a chat. The ladies swished long fringe at the end of their tails as some stood with small groups of special friends. Others wove around the cliques or traversed the field from end to end. Many snorted the morning air, nostrils flared. Some pawed the slick ground, nuzzled others, touched noses. All appeared genial. One rangy individual, an inland sea embossed on her side, excuse me, sashayed over to greet me, her sharp-boned rectangular body gangly, her bag a wrinkled leather balloon. I reached forward, caressed the top of her bumpy head. She pushed her face closer so I could stroke her hairless, pink and gray nose. Our eyes locked. We stood together for a long, long time. At last I whispered, "I have to go." "Thanks for coming," she said. "I get lonesome sometimes." "Me too," I murmured. "Drive ever so carefully, my love," she said. Okay, this one is for my wife who's here, and it's part of our history. When we lay in the grass, while the sky glowed peach along its far edges, and shadows morphed trees into whiskery shapes, I propped my head on one hand, stretched out in front of your chicken coop. The hens slept in their nests. Your two cats stalked mice, insects. We nestled in the damp grass like wild things, much softer, more innocent. Still, we were grown women who should have recognized the danger we faced. We were young then, much younger. Now, we are too busy, distracted to linger in unmown grass. The chicken coop is gone. A vicious attack killed the hens. Trixie and Virgil, the two cats you brought from the city 30 years ago, are buried near the spot with my son's rabbit. We are both still here, but we are different, as is the grass, tended now. Okay, last one. This one I wrote, it was like a little exercise we all gave ourselves. We're all, I guess except really for Cap, are pretty long-winded. And so we had a challenge to write a poem in a very few lines. I don't even remember what it was because as soon as I got home, I started adding to it right after the group. I couldn't help myself. Rich as Croesus, now my daughter is rich, a practical, tactical, mathematical whirlwind Wall Street woman. But in 1972, she slept by the sea, where whales breathed and sang all night, her hair sun-bleached, her skin salty, upon a cot within our red VW bus, while I sat behind the steering wheel, staring at the sky, pretending to fly. She dreamed she buried her overalls, the ones I embroidered with butterflies. Now she twirled and twirled in a jewel-encrusted purple princess dress. Dreamed she ruled the world. I, eyes open, dreamed I landed all alone on the pockmarked moon. Now, still forever landbound, I struggle to remember. Was the sky black velvet that night? Was every star close enough to touch? Or were the heavens shrouded in clouds, dark, still? Now, when I kiss my daughter, and I often kiss her, both when I am awake and when I am dreaming, I still taste salt. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you very much.
Now if I can get out of here without killing myself.
And before we close out this session of Greenkill Sessions Presents Calling All Poets, rightfully so, we hear about shopping local and growing local and eating local. Well, how about we support the local writers and the local musicians and the local art galleries? This is Rethinking the Ground Rules. You heard some works from it tonight. Works by the Hudson Valley Women's Writing Group. It's from Mediax Books. And please, if you can, pick up a copy. I want to thank Jan, Mary, Tana, and Kappa. Thank you very much. Give yourselves a hand. Give yourselves a hand for coming out on a really crummy evening. And if I can just say 2 words about upcoming CAPS performances. We will be here on November 10th. Ruth Dannon, myself, Guy Reed, and Stephanie Russell will be the featured readers. And on November 4th, through Zoom only, unfortunately, still Ken Holland, Mary Makovsky, and Sharon Ferrante. That's on November 4th, first Friday. So I want to thank you all again for coming by. Thank you for coming, and we will see you Thursday, November 10th. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dave.